able to speak. You don't have to go on mute, that's okay. Leona's saying you don't need to do that. Right, that's great. I'll wait till Leona tells me when to start and then I'll formally start the meeting. Thanks. Good evening everybody and welcome to this full council meeting of Wednesday the 26th of April, and this is the first meeting of the earlier start, but I'm sure nobody wants a repeat of the long meeting in December, and bearing in mind the effect of conditions of service on employees, so we will not be repeating that hopefully. So, the meeting is hybrid and we have a number of people joining the meeting remotely, and it's helpful if those members keep their microphone on mute until they actually come in to speak. As usual for members in the chamber, please press the microphone before you speak and switch off after you have spoken. As usual, the meeting is being streamed live and stored for later viewing, and I can suspend the webcast if I consider that it will affect the proceedings, and a recording of the meeting will also be published on the Council's YouTube channel. If you are using acronyms, could you please say the words out in full once so that it is understood by members of the public? I'm going to use my discretion and take the motion after the Council business on the agenda. At the end of this meeting, I'll also have a 5-minute comfort break for everybody before we go to the special council meeting which follows this one. So on to the agenda now. Apologies for absence. Are there any? Oh, sorry, before I do anything else, sorry Colin, I've taken you for granted already. Could I please formally and give a warm welcome to Colin Sweeney, who's the Democratic Services Manager, and wish you well in the post, and thank you very much for joining us too. So,
Thank you. Thank you, members. One apology from Councillor Devlin.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. The Councillors' Code of Conduct requires elected members to declare any connection they may have in any of the items on the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest? None indicated. On to item 3, minute of the meeting of the 1st of March 2023, and this minute is submitted for approval, and any contributions are for points of accuracy only. Agreed? Agreed, thank you very much. On to item 4, that's the minutes of meeting of the 1st of March to, now I've got 25th of April, but there was another couple of meetings came in after that, so it was, is it still to the 25th of April. So I'm going to read out the list, the minute volume contents, and if there's any members wish to come in, if they could let me know. Otherwise, I'll just try and rattle through it. So we've done the first one, that's a full council meeting, and then I'm just going to take it 3 at a time. So please indicate if there's anything that you want to ask on that. So it's the Cabinet of 2nd March, Appointments Committee 2nd March, Civic Hospitality Committee of 8th of March. I did notice on the Civic Hospitality Committee list that there was a wee error on it. Deputy Provost Kate Campbell deputised for me in the hub event at Cowan Park, and thank you very much for that. So that part was omitted from it. Also, you'll see, if you look at it, I attended the funeral of the late James McVitie. Sorry?
Are you not referring to the Provost's
yes.
appointments? Are you referring to the minutes?
Oh no, sorry, so I'm away ahead. I've used the Civic Hospitality Committee. So, back to the list. So, Licensing Committee, Cabinet, Audit and Scrutiny. Any questions on any of those 3?
Provost.
Oh, Louise.
Provost, thanks. Can I draw your attention to page 38 of the minute volume, which is Cabinet 23rd of March. There's a factual inaccuracy there about how the debt recovery policy item's been noted there, so it's item 381 in the minute. It says that I said we do not share information with debt collection agencies, and that's factually incorrect. The discussion we were having on the day was about credit reference agencies, and the point of accuracy is that we do share information with debt collection agencies in as much as our sheriff officers do debt collection on behalf of the council as per that contract and as per our debt recovery policy. But the point I was making was that we do not proactively share information with credit reference agencies, and we do not sell data to credit reference agencies. So if we can amend that inaccuracy, please.
Thank you very much, Louise. And that will be added to it for the sake of accuracy. So now on to the Planning Applications Committee of the 5th of April, Local Review Body, Licensing Committee of the 11th of April, Cabinet of 11th of April, Education Committee of 20th of April, the Appointments Committee of the 25th of April. Agreed. Thank you very much, everybody. So, on to item 6. And that's items remitted to the Council. 6.1, General Fund Capital Programme, and this has been remitted to the Council as it's for the Council to approve the amendments to the programme. Are there any questions or comments on that, Councillor Ireland?
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got a few questions, but my first question is on page 7. It's where the paper reports, consequently, we are constantly monitoring project expenditure. This is because of the cost of, the rising cost of construction costs. And they're saying, so additional cost pressures on key projects can be covered by deferring or reducing other projects to compensate. I'm wondering if there's any information available as to which schemes may not be progressing under the capital plan. I do note that it just might be delayed, but I wondered if there was more information available on that. I also noted that there was £800,000 on the line.
Sorry, Councillor Ireland, is this a different aspect? Can we take it one at a time?
Yes,
I think it'll be
certainly.
easier for the officers to respond. Okay, Mrs McCrossan. Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
When we were setting the capital plan, which was approved just back in March there, we had already revised various projects at the Capital Asset Management Group and identified those which could either be deferred or dropped, and that was incorporated into the capital plan, which went up just last month. If we have any further pressures, because with other tenders coming up throughout the year, we might find ourselves in that situation where money is restricted again, then obviously anything that was to be deferred or adjusted would be done through the means of the report to Cabinet, the quarterly reports, and would flag that up either as timing or actual changes to your overall programme.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Your next item, could you give us a chance to get to the page that you're referring to? So,
Yes, certainly. And thank you very much, Margaret. I'll just keep an eye on those quarterly reports, but thank you for that. This is it's page 14, and on page 18 and page 23, it was just for looking for a wee bit of clarification on a couple of the amounts that were quoted. On page 14, I noted that there's still £800,000 projected spend on the delayed Eastwood Park Leisure Centre. So I'm just looking for a wee bit of information about what that spend is for on that 800,000. The same goes for, on page 23, 866,000 on environment vehicles. It was, what vehicles are these? And on page 18, there's mention of 31,000 for Clarkson Town Centre action plan and traffic management improvements, and it was the traffic management improvements that caught my eye. I wondered if anyone could give me any additional information on what those traffic management improvements will be. So it was just on those three figures under the main progress report.
okay, Margaret, do you want Councillor Ireland to go through them one by one now? Would that be help?
I can answer the first one, and I'll have to defer to my environment colleagues either today or at a later date to provide the information in the other two.
Yeah,
But
and
for
it
the East,
is always helpful, you know, our officers are accessible, you know, if members do have questions of detail on these reports, it's something that could be found out beforehand as well, and certainly bring it to the attention of the full council if they so wish, but things like that could be sought beforehand. Thanks, Margaret.
the Eastwood Park Leisure one, though, you mentioned the 800,000 that was expected to be spent in 22-23. And at this stage, it's really just initial design work and fees that are associated with the scheme that are going through, and would expect that to continue throughout the next year as well.
Thank you, Margaret. The next point, could you repeat that? Is it Katrina who would be answering this? Andrew, so would you like the question to be repeated?
I think I understand the question. It was
All right,
on
good.
fleet.
All right then, thank you.
Projected outturn. Those vehicles include all the vehicle fleet from HSCP, education, environment, right across the department. So that was what the projected outturn was at the time for. It could be anything. It could be bin motors. It could be small vehicles, light vehicles, tippers. It could be anything. I could get you a list if you require it.
Okay, Mrs. Macaulay.
Yes, and just on the Clarkston traffic management, I'd noted 31,000. I would need to come back with further details on that, and I'm happy to do that directly to the elected member.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you very much, Provost, and thank you very much to the officers. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to them because that was nice that they answered my question. I think these are best done in an open forum. I did have one last question, and I said I note there was very minimal capital spend identified for the works on Barrhead Foundry. The only reason I'm asking about that is I've had people contact me because at Eastwood and Barrhead, as far as I'm aware, both the sauna and the steam room are out of use and have been for some time. So I wondered if there was any funds that were identified to repair these for both facilities. Thank you.
Again, I'm happy to follow up directly on the detail of what that spend relates to, and also to follow up on the repair to the two facilities and what the timescale is for that, and I'll come back directly.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, questions could be sought beforehand, and yes, by all means bring them up in an open forum, but if they're asked beforehand, you've got the answers, and then you can, if you so choose, raise them at the full council meeting. We're on still on item 6, General Fund Capital Programme. Okay, agreed? Agreed, thank you. On to item 6.2, Housing Capital Programme.
Point of order, Provost. Point of order. Sorry, I can't hear your microphone, Provost.
Sorry. Which rule are you suggesting has been infringed by the point of order you are raising?
No, it was actually to do with the fact that you've gone from agenda item 4 to agenda item 6, and I understand your reasons as to why, because you wish to have agenda item 5 heard at the end of the council meeting. However, there's been no public explanation on the webcast to the public as to why agenda item 5 is being heard towards the end of the meeting. So I just thought it might be prudent to question as to why.
Councillor MacDonald, I have already given my decision on this, and the matter is now closed. 6.2 Housing Capital Programme. This is the item that we're on just now. So this has been remitted to the council, as it is for the council to approve the amendments to the programme. Are there any questions on this item? None? Okay. On to item 7. Statements by conveners or representatives on the joint boards. So I understand there are 2, one by Councillor Pradnell, who is the convener and the vice chair of the Integration Joint Board, and also from Councillor Anderson in your capacity about the trust. So Councillor Pradnell, I'll come to you first of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. This is a statement from the Integration Joint Board held on the 29th of March 2023. At the March IJB meeting, the Chief Financial Officer set out the proposed budget for 2022-24. 2023-24. The IJB acknowledged that this is the most difficult budget that has had to be considered, as the risks are significant. However, our local position is largely in line with national challenges facing IJBs and partner bodies. There was discussion around the risks, in particular managing and containing new demand for services and prescribing. However, after receiving assurance that the HSCP, the Health and Social Care Partnership, would still be able to meet its statutory duties, the budget was approved. It was noted that budget contributions from both partners met the requirements set out by the Scottish Government, including the pass-through of the pay award funding from East Renfrewshire Council. However, against the current cost pressures of £10.34 million, this still leaves a gap of £0.76 million. In order to address the budget gap, the HSCP are working on a number of savings proposals, including the implementation of the Supporting People framework, which sets out eligibility criteria for social care services. The IJB were supportive of the framework, which was also approved by the IJB at the March meeting. There was a discussion around the importance of communication, training and partnership working, and the potential impact on unpaid carers was also noted. A lot of change will be required at pace, and elected members will now have received a briefing regarding this earlier in the week. The Chief Financial Officer also presented the Revenue Monitoring Report, which shows a projected overspend for the year of just under £0.3 million, which will be met from reserves. All costs will continue to be monitored, and the IJB will consider our provisional outturn in June. The IJB also received a brief update on the joint inspection of adult support and protection, which is currently being undertaken by the Care Inspectorate, the purpose of which is to seek assurance that adults at risk of harm in Scotland are supported and protected by existing national and local adult support and protection arrangements. The final report is expected at the end of June. The IJB welcomed the co-production activity outlined in the Equalities and Human Rights Mainstreaming Report, along with the establishment of an equality working group and planned training, whilst noting the required culture change to fully embed equality practices. The IJB agreed to continuation of our equalities outcomes for the next 2 years. A detailed report setting out the position in relation to unaccompanied asylum-seeking children in the Ukrainian resettlement scheme was presented. It was noted that the resettlement scheme is working well and that there are 93 Ukrainian guests within East Renfrewshire. In terms of the National Transfer Scheme for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, the IJB noted the supports provided and the financial impacts, as there is a funding shortfall from the Home Office. Lobbying of the Scottish Government and the Home Office has been taking place through COSLA and other national bodies. This expected profile of unaccompanied children could give rise to new cost pressures in 2023-24. The scheme also has implications for housing and education services. It is planned that a further update will be shared with Cabinet in due course. We also had a further update on the Specialist Children's Services realignment, which will see child and adolescent mental health services and the specialist community paediatrics teams brought together under a single management structure, which will be hosted by East and Bartonshire Health and Social Care Partnership. The IJB were in agreement with the principles in the transfer of resource, taking reassurance that local services and initiatives will not be impacted. We extended our thanks to Deirdre McCormack and Amina Khan, as this was their last IJB meeting as members. We also recognise the huge contribution of Eamon Daly has made in the running of the IJB and wished him well in his retirement. And the board also endorsed Eamon's successor, Colin, as the new Standards Commission officer for the IJB. This concludes our report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pragnell. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, I have a statement on behalf of the Culture and Leisure Trust. Firstly, overall ERCL, sorry I shouldn't use an abbreviation, the East Renfrewshire Culture and Leisure Performance. The Council will be aware of all the work the Trust has been doing to rebuild following the challenges of the pandemic. I am delighted to note that all key commercial business areas have more than exceeded now pre-COVID levels. In particular, gyms and fitness membership continues to grow and is now at a record level. The theatre continues to build its reputation and profile, and in fact just last week there were 3 sell-out shows, including what I understand was described here as a Scottish music icon, Lulu, her only Scottish appearance on her tour to date. I hope many of you enjoyed that, if you attended. With regards to sports and physical activity, March was a big month for the Culture and Leisure Trust, with the Active Schools team organising 2 major competitions for the school pupils within East Renfrewshire. Firstly, we staged the primary and secondary schools cross-country championships, taking place in Ruthin Glen Park on a lovely sunny morning on the 7th of March. And we had over 650 primary and secondary pupils taking part. 19 primary schools and 7 secondary schools were represented with teams. Volunteers we have to thank from Giffnock North Athletics Club were on hand to help on the morning and contributed significantly to the success of the event. The second large event was the Culture and Leisure Trust Annual Dance Championships, which ran over 2 consecutive nights in March. Overall, there was over 550 participants that took to the stage at Eastwood High Sports Centre this year, with a wide variety of dance styles on display, ranging from cheer and lyrical to Irish and hip-hop. As with previous years, the standard was incredibly high, with acts from over 20 of our primary schools and 7 of our high schools. And it also included a fantastic performance from pupils from Isabel, representing Isabel Mayor School. A huge well done to everyone who took part, and a big thank you to our Active Schools team, teachers, coaches and parents who gave up their time. With regards to the spring holiday programme, the Active Schools and community sports teams were busy over the spring holiday period, organising and delivering highly sought after activity and sport camps at Barrhead High School and Eastwood High School, respectively. With all spaces booked out on the programme, we welcomed 325 children and young people across the 2 weeks, taking part in over 20 different sports and activities. A huge amount of credit is due to the Trust and the Council's coaches, support staff and volunteers, who strive to ensure a fun, safe and enjoyable experience for all of the attendees. With regards to library and information services, we had the reintroduction of Open More at Clarkson Library. Open More was first piloted in 2019 as a means of allowing customers access to Clarkson Library during evenings when no staff are present. Open More allows us to offer an additional 27 hours per week access to library users, and will allow self-service issue and return of books, access to PCs and study space, and is also an additional warm and welcome space. Whilst the original pilot was suspended due to COVID, the aim is to launch to the wider library community in May 2023. Over the winter months, the library service was able to make improvements to Mearns Library. Along with some refurbishment work, including painting and new flooring, the team worked with Enable Scotland to make the space more neurodiverse friendly, and there was also a purchase of a sensory magic carpet to add to the children's library area. It is an immersive sensory experience for all ages and will be a great addition to the newly refreshed space, encouraging families with young children to stay in the library for longer. And finally, I'm sure we would all agree it is a really strong picture, and we look forward to hearing more about the Trust performance at the future council meetings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anderson. And now on to item 8, which is the Provost engagement. And this is a regular report on civic engagement, simply for noting. But I would...
Provost, just to clarify, is an opportunity to ask the conveners questions on matters on their report?
No, there isn't.
Okay, thanks.
No. So, item 8, and on the list, I would like to draw your attention to the 3rd of March, when I attended the funeral of former head teacher of St Ninians, Mr James McVitie. And it's well known, you know, the input that he had on our excellent education system. And it was a very moving service. It also included musicians from St Ninians, and they were just wonderful. and there was a beautiful singer, the cantor there, soloist, and amongst other things, for people who know music at all, she sang Panis Angelicus, and it was very emotional. So it was a good tribute to Mr McVitie, and he would have been proud of it, and they also did him and us proud. So it was a privilege to attend that. It was very sad, and it was also attended by a great number of current staff and former staff there. So the other item was just a wee correction that while I was ill, Deputy Provost Kate Campbell was good enough to attend in my place, and one that isn't mentioned is the 4th of April. That was the Community Enterprise Hub, the grand opening there at Barrhead in Cowan Park. So thanks for doing that as well. So there's a lot of good work happening across the area, and it's a pleasure to be Provost and attending these. So, leaving that aside, on to item 9, is the Outcome Delivery Plan and Fairer East Wren Plan 2023-24. And it's for the Council to consider and approve the content of the Outcome Delivery Plan 23-24 Annex 1 and the Fairer East Wren Plan 2023-24 Annex 2. These are both one-year operational plans, while the Council undertakes a focused period of longer-term strategic planning. So I will invite any comments or questions. Councillor, I'm going to say Councillor Andrew there. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you very much, Provost. Actually, the question I wanted to ask to point number 7 fits in quite nicely to this agenda item. So it's with regards outcome 4 on page 41 and the reorganisation of specialist children's services within the HSCP. I've had a number of constituents raise concerns over delays arising due to COVID-19 for child and adolescent mental health services. I'm of the understanding that the HSCP is currently undergoing a recruitment campaign to help us achieve this outcome delivery plan, and I was just looking for an update on how that recruitment progress is being made. Thank you.
Councillor Morrison. Julie? Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Yes, there was a wee bit of a delay in recruitment because the service is transferring to East Bartonshire as a host, so we had to get approvals from both Chief Finance Officers. We are now confident about recruiting. The recruitment's underway. I can't give you timelines at the moment, but I can come back to you with that. I think one of the advantages of it becoming a bigger service under single management is that as a small service, when we have vacancies, it really impacts on families and waiting times. So it should provide a good deal of contingency for that. But I can come back to you with detail around recruitment as and when.
That's very welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay, on to Councillor Ireland.
Thank you very much, Provost. Pardon me. I've seen these reports for the last few years, and something that strikes me immediately is there's a great deal of information that isn't in this report, and it is discussed in the paragraph 13, page 40, that there is all the graphs are missing, as well as the updates on where we are sitting against targets. In paragraph 13, it talks of bringing the timeline forward as to when the paper was to be presented to Council, but this has had the effect that all this information is now not on this paper, so there's no way for me to see at all, or anyone here to see where we're sitting against our targets. This was always provided every year up to now, but I suppose I'm asking, there's no graphs included, there's no progress shown. I would like to know why this decision was taken to bring the timeline forward, especially as all this information is missing. I think it was Councillor Swift was usually one who picked up on a few things on this and asked many questions. So it is really essential information that should be on here. So it is saying in this paragraph that the information should be available at the end of April, but we're almost at the end of April. And it's also saying that instead of bringing this information to a future council meeting, it will just go up on the website at some point. So my question is, given that we're only a few days away from this information being available, do you have any indicative information that could be passed to councillors as to where we sit against targets? Can this, or, which I would prefer, can this be reported in full at our next full council meeting so that we can actually look this over as a body?
Okay. I think Louise, do you want to come in first? Okay, Councillor O'Donnell, then Louise.
Councillor Allen, you're completely right. It's very difficult to give scrutiny to this report without having the data of past performance and future targets. So completely agree with you on that issue. In terms of when, and for us to do proper scrutiny, we need both of those, the historical data and the future targets. But I'll pass on to Louise because I know there are plans for that to come back to future meetings.
Thank you. In the last few years, we have brought up the outcome delivery plan in June, alongside our end-year strategic performance information. This year, we were asked to bring that forward to April, because the June meeting will have that performance information for you to see. But we wanted the forward-look discussion to focus on vision for the future, the wider strategic plan for the area. So you definitely will get that information at the council meeting in June. But given the proximity to the new financial year, now that we are in the new financial year, it was felt that you would want to see the plans for the new financial year as soon as possible. So we brought the plan to this meeting, but the performance information you're looking for will come forward at the next meeting. So you'll have the opportunity to scrutinise both before we put this on the website for the public.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right then. Finished? Finished. Okay then. Or any other questions or comments on that? Can we move to item 10? Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, item 10, National Planning Framework 4, NPF 4. So this report simply asks the Council to note the adoption by Scottish Ministers of the National Planning Framework 4 on the 13th of February 2023 and the implications for the Council's current and emerging local development plans, referred to as the acronym LDP, and the subsequent effect on the consideration of applications for planning permission. Specifically to note the adoption of the National Planning Framework 4 by Scottish Ministers on the 13th February 23 and the subsequent effect on the consideration of applications for planning permission. That NPF 4 will form part of the Council's development plan alongside the adopted LDP 2, the policy framework, Appendix 2, which will be used to guide planning decisions, and that the full implications of the new development plan regulations and the more detailed steps for preparing LDP 3 will be reported to the Council in due course for consideration. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Wallace.
Provost, I've noticed through this report the term 20-minute neighbourhoods being used quite extensively. Members may be aware of what's been going down in Oxford recently. There would appear to be a view that really what this 20-minute neighbourhoods is all about is simply laying the foundations for a future carbon credit scheme, which would restrict free movement of residents whom it is felt have exceeded their carbon credits allocation for that month. I'm just curious to know, are officers aware of this? Is this purely conspiracy theory, or is there any feeling that there's any actual substance to these concerns? Thank you.
Thank you. Gillian, how are you on conspiracy theories?
To be absolutely frank, only when the economic development team were out doing their place consultations did we become aware that there was this group that has a different view of what a 20-minute neighbourhood actually is. So we've had no contact in terms of it, the planning service, and I know it wasn't a very pleasant experience for the staff members who were at the consultation. So yes, we are aware of it, and it's something that we are thinking about and will probably have to deal with when we go out to consultation in the future.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Wallace? No. Okay, Councillor Ireland.
Thank you very much, Provost. I've got two questions, but I did want to say that I actually really welcome this report. I loved seeing the emphasis and the importance of partnership working. That was something that I was really pleased to see, that we're exploring it to see if there's opportunities to increase resources within the council or share services with other councils. I very much welcomed that, and it was great to see it. What I also welcomed was the focus in the National Planning Framework 4 on low carbon urban living, supporting net zero energy solutions, rolling out networks of 20-minute neighbourhoods. It's not it's a complete conspiracy to it's going round. Managing development on the edge of settlements and supporting a greener wellbeing economy and building community wealth. So I did welcome all that. Now I did have a couple of questions. The first one was paragraph 15 and 23 mention local place plans. It's something that I really welcome.
Councillor Ireland, what page?
Paragraph 15 and 23. I do not have the page. If you bear with me 1 second, I will give you the...
Page 95, our Chief Executive advises, so page 95. If you give us a chance to get there, please.
Something I really welcomed was, as I said, the local place plans when the planning bill was making its way through the Scottish Government. So I saw that this was mentioned in those two paragraphs. So my first question is, what work are we planning to undertake to put these in place here in East Renfrewshire, and what form will that take, just specifically because they were mentioned in the report? The second question was, I wanted to ask, because there's a lot coming through on this National Planning Framework, so whether training will be provided to the Planning Applications Committee. I think that might be exceptionally important to do that. So if anyone can give me any information on that, that would be really welcome. Thank you.
Julie, would you like to reply? Thanks.
Thank you, Provost. Councillor Ireland, in terms of the local place plans, we're still waiting for guidance from government, but we will shortly be writing out to communities to advise them of the process, what opportunity there is for them to become involved in the preparation of those local place plans. So we'll provide a link to the guidance when that becomes available. We will also offer support as well. We recognise some communities will be better placed than others to participate. And once those are submitted, then those are taken into account in preparing the local development plan. So we will be engaging shortly with the communities around that. And in terms of the training, we will be rolling out training to all elected members in terms of the National Planning Framework, and also subsequent to that on the local development plan, the new style local development plans as well.
Okay. Is there anything else?
I just wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you, because I really would welcome the training on that. Any help for the planning committee would be very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Bamforth, would you like to contribute? I think your hand was up.
Yes, sorry. It's a bit far to reach this new system. It wasn't really to comment on the local development plan, because I echo everything Councillor Ireland says, but it was just to respond to what Councillor Wallace said. And I think, as I'm sure Councillor Wallace has looked... Yes, but I'm sure you have looked into it, because I think in Oxfordshire...
Sorry, excuse me. As they used to say, one singer, one song. So, Councillor Bamforth, you are speaking.
I just hope that the residents and councillors take heed to our council officers, because apparently in Oxford they've had to put out statements because officers have received death threats because of some of the misinformation that's out there. Apparently there are issues, there has been a conflation of two different issues. Whilst Oxfordshire is participating in or looking into the 15-minute neighbourhoods, there have been issues with congestion in certain parts of Oxfordshire, which we have no similar issues in the same scale here in East Renfrewshire, and some people have appeared to have conflated it, and it has created real problems for officers within Oxfordshire, and it's really quite concerning, some of the things that have been on the television. There was a Panorama programme about it last week, as well as some groups locally and nationally about it, and I just want to say that I absolutely support our officers in terms of the 15-minute neighbourhoods, and I think we have to ensure that we're looking at that aspect of it and not conflating other issues with it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Banfield. Councillor Legg.
Further to the comments by my colleague on my left, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, when there was a presentation at Mearns Cross Shopping Centre, the Avenue Shopping Centre, relating to this matter, I was literally besieged by constituents who were very upset to a point almost of hysteria. And a lot of it was a misunderstanding of the facts, but some of it was not a misunderstanding. And some of the proposals, which are not going to be implemented for decades, literally, should not have been in that, in my opinion. Comments about making a green space out of one of the levels of the car park, the top level of the car park, reducing the number of cars so that people will have to be more active in coming to the shopping centre. This kind of stuff, which created a reaction, and in my opinion, it should not have gone out in the way it did, quite frankly. It created a stressful situation for many people living in the area, because it really impacts directly on the area provided by my colleague Councillor Morrison and myself and others in this chamber today. And Councillor Bamforth, going on about how successful, how wonderful it is, may not be aware of these. Maybe she didn't receive these protests. I know she's a councillor of the same world as me, but I certainly had to deal with that. And I think really the officers, while I'm sure they do a great job and I commend them for that, should perhaps be a bit more circumspect about what is said and how it's presented in these matters, because it did cause a lot of upset.
Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you very much, Provost. A few points. Similar to Councillor Ireland, I really welcome this report. And I have to acknowledge the work of our planning department to get to this stage. It is well known that in Scotland there's a national shortage of planners, so there will be a lot of serious work in developing these plans and implementing them. So we should thank them for the work that they're doing and that they're about to do. I also acknowledge note on paragraph 38, don't know the page number, but it's referring to what was mentioned earlier in terms of briefing for members. I think this is very important. It's not just planning. I think these are very serious implications for how we manage new developments going forward, and it's important that all members are part of that and have a full update on where we are. Linked to that, and it does link to this 20-minute neighbourhood issue, I spoke to the Scottish Minister for this, Joe Fitzpatrick, this morning, and raised the concerns that we've seen with our officers, at Mearns Castle, that we need to be better at communicating what we mean by 20-minute neighbourhoods and what that means in practice for individuals. Conspiracy theories can create their own life, and I think it's responsibility of every member here to be absolutely clear on the facts and what the implications are of that. Ultimately, all of the plans, LDP3 and the likes, will all be consulted with our residents, quite rightly, and they are the ones that will be determining what a 20-minute neighbourhood means. The 20-minute neighbourhood is a reflection. It's perhaps the wrong phrase, but it is a reflection of some of the work we had at the Vision for Future in terms of having local amenities freely available to everyone in a closer environment. Something that I think everyone in this council is very supportive of. But I think we do need training. We do need help to make sure we've got the right language when we're talking about this. It's easy to dismiss a conspiracy theory, but it can grow arms and legs, and we need to nip that in the bud as soon as possible, and it is our mutual responsibility to do that. When mentioning it to Joe Fitzpatrick, he was aware of these conspiracy theories, and they also understand that there's a role in the Scottish Government in making sure that we're clear in what the messaging of what this is, and that people don't misinterpret it the wrong way. So I think with that, as I said, I warmly welcome the report and thank the planning officers for getting this paper in front of us. But I don't know, Lorraine, if you would like to add anything on this point.
Yes, so a couple of things in terms of 20-minute neighbourhoods. I think it's a name for a group of concepts, and I would ask all elected members, if they haven't read it yet, to read the National Planning Framework and what the place principles are. And most of it are the sort of things that you're telling me in conversations that our communities want, in terms of a sense of community, a sense of being able to get to the amenities that you want on a day-to-day basis. What I would advise is that we don't think in terms of labels like a 20-minute neighbourhood. What we do is talk to our communities about what they want, what their ideas are. Now, the other thing is our communities will have a wide range of ideas. You know, there'll be people who are very keen on active travel, there'll be people who are more keen on the use of their cars, and it's about getting the ideas of all the communities together. I think the work the teams have been doing and looking at town centres, and maybe just to go back to that, when the previous council approved Vision for the Future, in that we talked about the importance of town centres and that we would consult with our communities about what they wanted for our town centres. So that work that Councillor Eglin was referring to and Gillian McCartney referred to was part of that work, where we consulted and said, what are people wanting in their town centres? And there was a wide range of ideas, but other, was a group of people who are saying, we'd like to be able to get to Newton Mearns town centre more easily by foot. It's not always easy to get to. Others were saying we want prams there. There was being able to put a pram. Most of it's online, you can actually see. So the next stage was then to come up with some concepts, but they very much are concepts. I haven't been involved in it, so I don't have detailed knowledge of that. But I think the important thing is not to get caught up in badges, but actually talk to our residents about what they're looking for in town centres and listen to them about what's important. And there will always be debates. Everybody, you'll know, our residents, all of us in this room, have got different ideas about different importance, but we'll try obviously where we can to get consensus, but maybe try not to get caught up in badges that people will put their own interpretation on, and listen to our residents and what they want. And I think that's what the National Planning Framework helps us do, if we're talking about perhaps focusing on the place principles which were in there. And I think then we can have a very rich consultation and discussion as we take Vision for the Future forward with our residents. So hopefully that was useful. Thank you.
Councillor Morris and then Councillor Wallace.
Okay, my question is not in 20-minute neighbourhoods, but I suppose in a way it's about the village of Tilston, so it kind of is about the quintessential 20-minute neighbourhood. Can I just say I warmly welcome the deeper level of partnership working which will be brought about by National Policy Framework 4, because it's become apparent from LDP2 and how that was devised that it appears there was not sufficient consideration to the given to the provision of primary care. Because in the village of Neilston, with the expansion of the village, the local GP surgery is at full capacity, and it has insufficient space to simply bring in another practitioner. So we've got an original concept of a 20-minute neighbourhood there, but it feels like it's been undermined somewhat, because potentially there'll be people moving into the new houses being built in the village, but there'll be insufficient capacity within the local doctor's surgery. So I hope that that's something which we can address and pick up in LDP3, because I know we closely look at education provision, for example, but perhaps we need to do more in the health provision. Thank you.
Would you like to respond to? I'm not asking you to. I just wondered if you did. You were okay, Julie. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. In terms of NPF4 and the new style local development plans, the evidence base is a fundamental part of that. It's infrastructure first approach, and a key part of that is evidence gathering, where we will be working with our colleagues in HSCP and education and other council services, as well as wider stakeholders out with the council itself. In terms of the GP provision specifically, or primary care, there is an opportunity which we're investigating through our development contributions policy to draw down contributions for physical infrastructure to meet the provision of primary care. We can't. That doesn't necessarily mean that we can put GPs in place. We can't do that through the planning system, but we can certainly seek to put infrastructure in place. So that's something that we're actively considering and working on at the moment. So that very much, yes, that infrastructure first approach is fundamental to the new style local development plan. It was considered, I would say, in terms of LDP2 and the previous plans, it's absolutely something that we of course did at that time, but you know, situations change, demands change. We can't predict in every instance what may happen, but certainly we're looking into that now.
I'm very satisfied
Very
with
much,
that. Thank you, Provost.
Julie. So can we agree the report and move on? Agreed? Thank you. On to item 11. Local development plans, supplementary guidance, affordable housing, development contributions, green network and householder design. This report updates the Council in relation to progress with the Local Development Plan 2 supplementary guidance documents, and to seek approval to submit the 3 statutory documents to Scottish Ministers for adoption. Specifically, it asks the Council to approve the proposed responses and recommendations to representations, approve the submission of the affordable housing development contributions in green network, finalised supplementary guidance to Scottish Ministers for adoption as attached in Appendices 1, 2 and 3, approve the publication of the non-statutory householder design planning guidance as attached in Appendix 4, and delegate to the Director of Environment to approve any minor inconsequential changes to the documents in line with Council policy prior to submission to Scottish Ministers. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Councillor Ireland.
Thank you very much, Provost. And through yourself, Provost, I actually wanted to extend a huge thank you to the Planning Department for the work that they've done on this to get it here to the stage that we have, especially the householder design guidance. Councillor McLean will know what I'm talking about, because we had meetings wanting to change this under the previous planning committee, and I wanted to thank you for actually listening at those meetings and taking and putting those changes into what we have before us. Even the difference not to set extensions down and back, that will make a huge difference as we move forward with the local reviews. Even so, I just wanted to take the opportunity to say a massive thank you to you for this and all the work that you've put into it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's always good to show appreciation for council officers. Councillor Wallace and and thank you to you, Councillor Wallace. We'll be here all night. We keep thanking each other. Anyway, it's nice to have camaraderie. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo the sentiments of Councillor Ireland to the Planning Department, because there has been clearly an awful lot of work put into this, and I would also like to thank Planning and Building Standards Manager Julie Nichol, because I had a number of questions on this yesterday, and I spoke to her in depth about it, and she got back to me this morning with some answers to them, so I really appreciate taking the time to do that. But I think this is, as Councillor Allen says, a great paper, and it can only help us going forward with it. Thank you.
That's good, and thank you for having that conversation, and it's not drawing out our meetings here with you doing that at these meetings. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks, Provost. Should I be thanking everyone as well before I start? Perhaps I should. These supplementary guidance is relatively new to me and will be new to a third of council members that are new. So I would really, and I understand and I've been briefed that these changes compared to the previous versions are pretty minor, and I'm comfortable with that. But as we're talking about the MPF for training session for all members, I would encourage that we have a space within that to make sure that we're addressing with some of the really technical issues that are here. Not just for the planning department, it impacts all of us. This is coming to the council, so it would be very helpful if we could incorporate that in. And I would also encourage us to get that date in the diary sooner rather than later. Ideally before recess. I don't know how feasible that is, really because we're working under this now. So I think we need to make sure that all members are as briefed as well as possible. So I'm not sure. I think they might want to respond on that.
Okay, thank you. Julie?
Of course, that's absolutely fine. We were planning to schedule training on NPF4 prior to recess, and we can look at other dates for further training beyond that and try to space it out over even 6 monthly periods so that the members are aware of what's coming in terms of training and information sessions.
Much appreciated, thank you.
Oh, we're all so polite tonight, that's great. So, agreed with that last item. We're now moving on to item 12, which is Capelrick House Capital Project Update. And this report advises the Council of the delay in progressing the proposed pioneering project Child's House for Healing in partnership with Children First at Capelrick House, and to seek approval for an increase in the financial contribution sought. So specifically, the Council is asked to note the delays to the project and the reasons for this. Note that the previously agreed provision of £418,000 from the General Fund Capital Programme is insufficient. Approve the proposed increase in financial provision within the General Fund Capital Programme from £418,000 to £1,200,000. Approve the use of the unallocated balance on the additional capital resource reported to Cabinet on the 2nd of March 2023 of £437,000 to partly support this increase, and to delegate responsibility to the Director of Environment and Head of Accountancy, Chief Financial Officer, to manage the £345,000 budget shortfall within current capital resources during 2023-24, and to report the measures taken to achieve this within the quarterly capital monitoring projects. Are there any questions or comments on this so far? Councillor Bamforth.
Thank you, Provost. I'm absolutely in favour of the Barna House because I know it's something that we've been talking about since 2018. It's a wonderful idea. So I want to say at the outset I'm fully supportive of it. I understand construction costs and things have gone up substantially in all aspects, but I'm just wondering if Children First, why initially it was a 50-50 kind of proportion, why is our proportion going up so much, and Children First, their proportion doesn't seem to be have increased in line with ours. And I understand this is going to be used Scotland-wide quite rightly because it will be a trailblazer. Will we be able to, charging sounds so inappropriate and I don't really mean it that way, but will we be getting, because all local authorities, I presume, and police forces and other agencies will be using it, will there be any kind of income coming from that in future to offset some of the costs of this? Because it is to treble it, I think it is 418,000 to 1.2 million. So yes, if you could clarify those, please. I'm not sure if it's Julie or who it would be.
Okay, I'm going to ask Lorraine to come in first of all. Thanks.
If I can come in first, then I'll pass to Katrina for a bit more detail and then on to Julie. But first in the round, in paragraph 10, it says the full project costs will be around 2.3 million, and with 1.2 million coming from the council. So unfortunately for Children's First, their costs have gone up roughly the same level as ours have. Maybe not exactly, but close enough. And I think for all of us, we have been in contact with Children's First, and they, because of the importance of this project, they're keen to go on. Whilst it isn't actually a Scotland-wide project, it is a Strathclyde North project which covers most of the councils around Scotland. What we do expect it to get Scotland-wide interest, because it will be the first of this scale of bringing it together. And we've hoped, in fact, some of it might get some international interest as well because of the scale of what we're actually doing. But if I can pass to Katrina first, just to check I've got those figures right. And it's still approximately, not quite, but approximately 50-50 each. Is that right, Katrina?
Yes, well, I think the principle is that the council will provide the building and make it wind and watertight and do the external works that are required, and our costs are estimated to be the £1.2 million. The cost that Children First, we've agreed that they would meet, is the fit out of the building and making it purpose-built for the purpose that it's designed for. And there's an estimate of what their costs. We haven't seen the final detail of their costs or their contribution, but we know their costs have also increased, and that detail is to be finalised. In terms of the potential around generating income, I think that would be for Children First, who are running the facility on behalf of the partnership. They do see it very much as a demonstrator type project where others will be coming to learn, and whether there's opportunities for the charity to generate income to cover their future running costs of that facility. But they will take on the running costs of the building, and at the minute, that sits with the council that we bear. It is a listed building, and we do need to do these repairs to the building anyway, now that we've had a more comprehensive survey, so that duty does fall on us.
Yes, so if I can just confirm, the operating model is planned to be that Children First will take over that building. They're a charity and they will run it. They obviously, as a charity, need to generate funds, but a lot of those are likely to be grant funding for that project, as it is a demonstrator project. So we won't be taking direct income from Children's First or trying to generate income in that building. It is very much a partnership project with Children's First and other public sector partners to do that. So that, Julie, is there more you'd like to say about it?
I think you've covered most things. It's just that since the report was written, the Scottish Government has created a board to look at developing this, and has asked for partnerships to come forward with bids to be pathfinders. So North Strathclyde Partnership, which we are part of, will do that. So we hope there may be some possibility of additional funding, potentially capital, but maybe some other funding as well. So we will pursue that with all vigour.
Much, Councillor Wallace.
Provost, I think everybody commends the project. If you recall, it came up in front of Council 25th of February 2021, and the whole project was pluses for absolutely everybody that was involved, including the Council, in which we're projecting about £1 million worth of savings over the next 25 years in power and lighting, etc. However, I do have a concern, which is if we actually look at paragraph 13 of that 2021 papers, it actually says the cost of all these works would be in the region of £879,000. At this stage, this is a worst case scenario. Now, from what I can understand, you have projections in which we build in possibilities of budgets going over, and we allow somewhere in the region of between 5 and 20% for that. The 5% generally is put into projects in which is perhaps a relatively new building. However, Cable Rig House, as we know, and we've just been reiterating here about rot and whatnot that has been found, in these types of buildings, we generally build in some in the region of 20% for these cost projections. This particular project, so I'm led to believe, we built in 5% for an old building. And the suggestion has come through that this was in order that we could all agree on it, and it would go through, and we will face the costs as and when they come through. Now, I appreciate this has nothing to do with this administration. This actually goes back to a previous administration. But I do feel that to put such projections through, which is really, I would say, very poor show, not just for the councillors around here, but the people that we represent. So I would like to have some kind of feedback on what our future projections are going to be for where we do build in additional costs for buildings such as this should be at the 20% and not at the very, very low minimum 5%. If I could have some assurances on that. Thank you.
Councillor Wallace, can I just confirm, are you referring to the discussion we had the other day? Or have you
what
had...
discussion was that?
We had a discussion about this project when you were talking about we built in 5%, or have you had... Was it part of that discussion you're referring to?
What I would like to bring out here is, yes, we have had a discussion. I just want it out in an open forum here as to why 5% was put through and not 20% was through, because it is residents that are paying for this. And I don't want to have discussions behind the scenes on such things that actually impact on our residents. And I feel that our residents should be kept aware of such costs as this, and it should be discussed in an open forum, as our colleagues over there were mentioning earlier on. Thank you.
If I could then confirm the discussion we had the other day, it was a general discussion about the amount of contingency we put into projects. And as I do brief all councillors, I would brief them on any issues that we've got. So we were talking about the level. I was pointing out in this project there is a level of contingency 20%. We don't do many projects in old buildings. I actually don't know how much contingency was built into the previous one. I don't have that knowledge. But what I think I explained to you at the time is for projects, often 5% is about the right amount for, say, a new build or something like that. And it depends on projects from projects. I did say what we've been working with our teams to do is encourage them, especially because inflation is going up at such a rate. When inflation was lower, levels of contingency weren't as important. But what I explained to you the other day was that with levels of inflation, and they have increasingly gone up with COVID, and then with the Ukraine war, construction inflation has gone up at a much higher rate. And also with older buildings, you tend to build in a higher level of inflation. So when the team looked at this again and looked at the quote, so I have no idea what the contingency was in the first one. But since that, they did detailed work, which discovered some things that are known at the last council meeting. Some work, the extra work that was required because they then did detailed work. But also because it's an old building, 20% is a reasonable contingency, but I don't have knowledge to know that 5% was built. I don't have that level of detailed knowledge. So, but however, 5% for new buildings is normally, what I've been told is 5 to 20% would be the normal range of contingency, depending on whether it's a new building, how far down the road you are in your detailed investigations. Usually as you get close to the end of the project, you can pull the contingency down. So if I didn't explain that to you the other day as clearly, it's not my background. I was just trying to explain why for an old building I felt 20% was a good idea, and we would encourage all our colleagues to build in more contingency when inflation and other things are going at such a rate.
Councillor Wallace.
I was merely seeking assurances that such contingency would be built into these types of buildings, and it would appear that I have had that, so thank you.
Okay, can we agree the report, item 12. Moving on to item 13 now, and that's the management rules, cemeteries and burial grounds, and the report seeks permission from the Council to advertise the proposed cemetery burial ground management rules and thereby consult with and seek the views of members of the public thereon. And the specific requests are within the paper. Are there any questions or comments on this? Can we agree the report? Agreed? Move on. Item 14, management rules, parks and open spaces. The Council is asked to approve the recommendations in the report regarding the advertising and consultation of the revised management rules for the regulation of parks and open spaces situated in East Renfrewshire. Are there any questions or comments? None. Agree the report? Agreed? Okay, so now we are back to item 5. And there is a notice of motion. And can I just clarify, confirm, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor MacDonald, you are proposing the motion. And do you have a seconder?
I do.
Can I confirm?
Councillor Ireland.
Confirm, Councillor Ireland, you are the seconder. Are there any amendments? Councillor Wallace?
Provost, I wonder if I might just call upon a 5-10 minute recess just to gather our thoughts on this particular motion. Thank you.
Just confirm if there's an amendment.
Is there an amendment to this motion?
There will be an amendment, yes.
So, yeah. And is the amendment being circulated or?
Not as yet, and that's why I'm asking for a recess.
Okay, no, that's reasonable, that's fine. It would be helpful to have a recess to consider both. Now, the amendment, who is proposing the amendment?
It will be proposed by Councillor Edlin, and it will be seconded, assuming all is tickety-boo, by Councillor Morrison. Thank you.
The amendment will be circulated, and we can have 5 minutes or so just to consider the aspects of that. Okay, so we'll have a recess now. Thank you.
That's it back, no. That's excellent. What's wrong?
Betty, we can all hear you.
Well, I've talked to the remote mirror, but I've done something to my telly.
All right, so is that off in the... So, all quiet? Welcome everybody to the special council meeting. No, sorry. Oh, it's a long night already for me. I don't know about the rest of you. Sorry about that. We are at the motion point in the agenda. Get my papers organised here. And we have established that the mover of the motion is Councillor MacDonald, to be seconded by Councillor Ireland. The mover of the amendment is Councillor Edlin, seconded by Councillor Morrison. We have established that now. So I would ask Councillor MacDonald to read out his motion, and then I would ask Councillor Ireland to second it, and also to ask Councillor Edlin to read out the amendment, Councillor Morrison to second it, and then I would go to Councillor MacDonald to speak to the motion. You would have 10 minutes, Councillor MacDonald, and then I would offer Councillor Ireland, if you would wish to speak, to second it, and you would have 5 minutes, and everybody else has 5 minutes after that. Okay, so I would now ask Councillor MacDonald to read out the motion, please.
Thank you, Provost. My motion is as follows. East Renfrewshire Council notes the very serious and damaging environmental impacts of disposable vapes and recognises an increase in these electronic devices being discarded in communities and public spaces across the East Renfrewshire Council area. Notes that disposable vapes contain a range of precious materials, including lithium and copper, which can be collected if recycled in a safe and appropriate manner, but are designed in a manner that does not allow for them to be disassembled and their recyclable materials separated. Council also considers there is a heightened risk of damage to infrastructure due to the potential combustion of batteries contained in the devices both at council-run facilities and within communities. Further anticipates the publication of the Scottish Government's urgent review into the environmental impact of disposable vapes currently being undertaken by Zero Waste Scotland. In light of the serious nature of these concerns, Council instructs the Chief Executive and the Leader of East Renfrewshire Council to write on behalf of East Renfrewshire Council to Lorna Slater, MSP, Scottish Government Minister for Green Skills, Circular Economy and Biodiversity, Michael Matheson, MSP, Cabinet Secretary for NHS Recovery, Health and Social Care, and Chief Executive of Zero Waste Scotland, Ian Galland, conveying Council's view that a ban on the sale of so-called disposable vapes be introduced in Scotland as soon as practically possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Allen, can you confirm that you will be seconding this motion?
confirm that I'm seconding. Thank you.
Councillor Edlin, could you read out the wording of the amendment, please?
Thank you, Provost. Council notes the role of e-cigarettes in assisting smokers to quit smoking combustible cigarettes, and current advice from the National Health Service that nicotine vaping is substantially less harmful than smoking and is one of the most effective tools for quitting smoking. Council further notes that the view of the British Medical Association that there is growing consensus that using an e-cigarette is substantially safer than smoking tobacco, balanced with the need to minimise the risk of uptake by never smokers. There is an urgent need to use all of the measures at our disposal as a local authority, including partnership working with agencies such as Police Scotland, to eradicate the illegal sale of tobacco, including e-cigarettes and disposable vaping products, to people who are underage within East Renfrewshire through increased enforcement, strict penalties and measures such as test purchasing. Pardon me. We also call for more effective enforcement measures, including potential action against retailers to prevent littering of vaping products and associated packaging, which is detrimental to the environment and the general amenity of our neighbourhoods. Finally, Council further notes the forthcoming publication by the Scottish Government's urgent review into the environmental impact of disposable e-cigarettes currently being undertaken by Zero Waste Scotland to aid Council in making an informed decision on the most appropriate manner to treat such waste in the most environmentally friendly manner possible.
Thank you, Councillor Edlin. Councillor Morrison, could you confirm you will be seconding this amendment?
That's correct, Provost.
Thank you. I will now hand over to Councillor MacDonald to speak to the motion. 10 minutes max.
Thank you, Provost. I move this motion in my name, and thanks to colleagues for their consideration. Thank you also to Councillor Annette Ireland for seconding the motion. I'd like to pay tribute in first to Laura Young, who initially brought this matter to my attention. Laura is a Duke of Edinburgh award-winning climate activist, environmental scientist and ethical influencer. In October 2022, Laura began her PhD between the University of Abertay and the University of Dundee as a Hydro-Nation scholar in climate resilience work. When she is not sitting in all-party discussions in the UK Parliament, meeting with government leaders, or hosting her own TED Talks to international audiences, Laura is a debate crusader, prompting people at all levels who serve in politics to talk about the important issues of the day that affect our natural environment. Laura is also one of our own, a native of Newton Mearns. She is an alumnus of Mearns Castle High School. It was recently when Laura contacted me highlighting the environmental impacts of single-use disposable vapes, asking me to consider moving this motion today to support the campaign for a ban on their sale, that I was both happy to assist and felt compelled to act. So far, 5 councils in Scotland have passed similar motions at either full council or committee level, calling for the Scottish Government to implement a ban on the sale of disposable vapes in Scotland. Those councils so far are Glasgow, Falkirk, Renfrewshire, Dundee and North Ayrshire. In Renfrewshire, the motion was brought at full council by Labour councillors and unanimously supported across their chamber. In Dundee, the item for discussion was brought by 2 Liberal Democrat councillors and gained unanimous cross-party support at committee level. In Glasgow, the Greens tabled a motion also gaining cross-party support on a modest amendment from Labour from across the council. In North Ayrshire, 2 SNP councillors tabled the motion and it passed with cross-party support. And in Falkirk, an SNP councillor and a Labour councillor proposed and seconded a motion. And also the Conservative member who speaks on environment issues spoke in favour of the motion at a meeting of their council, also passing with unanimous cross-party support. Members, this motion is completely apolitical. It is not representative of any position by any political party. Group leaders, I would hope, would consider this a motion that can be voted on freely by their group members, and I would encourage members to feel comfortable enough to do that. My hope is that today we can pass this motion in a genuine display of open collaboration across the Chamber and send a clear message from East Renfrewshire that we support a ban on these single-use electronic devices that are harming our natural environment and are littering our streets, pathways and even our rural areas. So what is a disposable vape? A disposable vape is a single-use electronic device made from metals like copper and aluminium, with a vessel containing flavoured liquids with nicotine of different strengths, and a lithium-ion battery generally encased in a plastic shell. With just over half of users reporting that they incorrectly threw them in the general refuse bin when finishing, rather than properly returning them to retailers to be disposed of properly, the vast majority of those single-use electronic devices are simply being dropped on the ground. The number of vapes thrown away are contributing to the fastest growing waste stream in the UK, with over 155,000 tonnes of electrical waste thrown away every year and 527 million electrical items hoarded in UK homes. The research was carried out as part of an investigation with the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. The number of vapes bought is part of a growing phenomenon in the UK, with 500 million now bought each year, with almost a fifth of UK adults having bought either a single-use rechargeable or rechargeable with a single-use chamber vape. The research has now identified that single-use vapes are particularly problematic, with 14 million single-use vapes bought each month, rising to 167.5 million in a year. The research found that over 50% of disposable vapes are thrown away, compared to 33% on average for all types of vapes. Single-use vapes are one of the most popular types of vapes to be bought alongside rechargeable vapes, Material Focus says. 37% of people who bought vapes in the last year bought a single-use vape, and this increases to 52% for 18 to 34-year-olds. Vapes contain a range of materials. When thrown away, the materials contained inside them are lost forever. Although vapes are covered in plastic, the lithium inside the battery forms a key material hidden inside the vapes. Each single-use vape contains on average 0.15 grams of lithium, and worth over 1.3 million single-use vapes are thrown away every week. This accumulates to 10 tonnes of lithium a year, equivalent to the lithium in batteries inside 1,200 electrical vehicles. There is also an incredibly dangerous aspect in respect of their combustive and explosive capabilities. Lithium batteries that are thrown away can cause fires. These fires have the potential to endanger the public and waste truck operators by causing fires on streets and waste centres across the UK and costing local councils millions of pounds. If batteries or electronic devices containing batteries end up inside bins or recycling lorries with other materials, then they are crushed in the waste and recycling process. This increases the chances that they could be punctures and self-combust, setting fire to dry and flammable waste and recycling around them. Local authorities across the country are seeing a sharp rise in plumbing problems within schools, as these vapes are being discarded and flushed down toilets and school washrooms, and they are causing a significant increase in maintenance costs for the wastewater plumbing to be repaired and cleared. On a recent walk litter picking near my home, I walked the length of Sundale Avenue in Clarkson, a distance of around 400 metres. In that single distance, I collected 23 disposable vape electronic devices found in the gutter and on the pavement. I simply could not believe my eyes at what this was meaning on a grander scale throughout our country. This is a quiet residential street, not on the doorstep of a school or near shops, and yet this is the effect that disposable vapes are having in our communities. They are simply being dropped the second the devices run out. If the devices are crushed, the contents of the devices are very sharp and can cause injury to young children who attempt to pick them up, or to the paws of dogs being walked locally. They also cause significant damage to car tyres if they are run over and the devices break up underneath. tyre shops have seen a significant increase in sales since disposable vapes have become so popular. But this is not the worst of it. Lithium-ion batteries can explode if they are damaged in any way. This is why they are not allowed to travel within hold luggage in commercial aircraft, and you must carry them only in hand luggage in the cabins of an aircraft. This is UK law. They are completely prohibited as they are considered a potentially dangerous item. If a disposable vape is crushed, stamped on, cut in half, mowed over by a council worker using lawnmowers, or ends up in the rubbish compactor of a bin lorry, the implications can be very serious indeed. These are significant dangers to the health and safety of the public, council workers and council infrastructure. If the vapes were being disposed of in a responsible manner, then this would not happen, but these vapes are simply being thrown away on the ground by people who care little about the environment or public safety. These vapes are turning up on our walkways, on our gutters of our roads, but in skate parks as well, children's parks, rural walkways and nature reserves. This is a failure of the current waste and electronic equipment regulations surrounding their proper disposal, and a failure by both manufacturers and retailers who are required to provide collection bins under current arrangements. Many of the shops I have paid a visit to do not even have such bins available, visibly in their business contrary to their obligations. The manner in which these products are advertised and marketed is also of public health concern. These products are purposefully wrapped in bright colours with names such as Flumfloat, Zuvu Drag Bar, Sirius, Draco and Cube, and come in flavours such as banana ice, mango milk, coconut, melon and blue raz lemonade. It's clear that young people are the key target customers for these products, and the lower price of the disposable single-use product also plays into this. When they are dropped on the ground, their attractive coloured packaging is attractive to young children, and this, I would argue, is grooming them to become future vapers when they pass the legal age to purchase them. Over 90% of young people under the age of 25 did not smoke cigarettes prior to taking up vaping. These young people are now the newest generation of nicotine addicts without a match ever being struck or a lighter ever being sparked. There are many reasons a ban would be appropriate. I have spoken about the environmental and health implications. By passing this motion to call on the Scottish Government to implement a ban, we would be raising awareness locally of the negative effects that single-use disposable vapes are causing, and would inform the public perhaps of many things they were not aware of. I would ask my colleagues from across the chamber to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. You were 3 seconds over there. That was, well, I would like to have said you just made it, but I should have given you a wee bit of warning just to speed up a wee bit. Councillor Ireland, I'll ask you to speak, and but if it's okay with you, I don't want to interrupt your flow of your speech, but maybe coming up to the 5 minutes, I could give you a wee warning. Is that okay? Right, over to you now.
Thank you very much, Provost, and I'll keep an eye out for the warning. I wanted to first of all pass on my enormous thanks to Laura Young for bringing this to myself and the SNP group and Councillor MacDonald, and I also want to thank Councillor MacDonald for bringing the motion tonight to full council. Laura Young has so far brought this to the attention of several local authorities across Scotland who have very successfully passed similar motions with, again, very importantly, this probably is the most important part, cross-party support. Councillor MacDonald touched on all the different parties. I think it was every single party in independence that had passed this in every council it's came to. The Scottish Government are, quite rightly in my opinion, undertaking an urgent review of disposable vapes. This is being carried out by Zero Waste Scotland, and I for one certainly look forward to the review being published. I have of course been aware of refillable vaping for quite some time, as we all have. And as an aid to help people quit smoking, it can, and refillable vaping can be very helpful as that transition. But until recently, what I didn't understand and didn't appreciate the scale of was the use of disposable vapes and how much that had moved. There's been a real shift that has moved from refillable towards disposable, and that's what we're talking about tonight. It's disposable and not the refillable vapes. Disposable vapes are fastest growing alternative to smoking in the UK, overtaking, again, other types, refillable and reusable. And that's something I wasn't aware of. So, again, huge thanks to Laura for bringing that to our attention. There's simply no getting away from the fact that there is significant environmental impact, and Councillor MacDonald touched on the environmental impact that's going to happen from the single-use disposable vapes. In 2022, the number of single-use vapes being thrown away is 2 every single second. And I was quite shocked by that. And just over half of users reported throwing their vapes in the bin when it runs out, rather than putting them in a waste electricals recycling bin. So that's 1 every single second is just being thrown in the bin. We're living in a climate emergency, and the waste they produce is quite simply ridiculous and unsustainable. In addition to this, there's simply no way to justify their sale, particularly when so much of their marketing is clearly targeted at children. I feel very strongly about this. But just recently, Ash Scotland and Keep Scotland Beautiful were among 18 organisations that wrote to the UK government asking for a ban on disposable vapes. Their letter talked of the issue of young people buying these, and it reads, "Moreover, disposable vapes have become hugely popular among young people since 2021. There have been more than a 7-fold increase in the proportion of 11 to 17-year-olds who vape using disposable e-cigarettes rather than reusables, and studies indicate that this group is particularly susceptible to the way in which they're marketed. Uptake among young people is particularly concerning, with multiple health professionals warning that instead of helping existing smokers to give up the habit," and that is important, "they could create a whole new generation hooked on nicotine." I was quite shocked when I read that, because again, this is something that I'm coming to. This came to my notice recently, that that shift has really happened towards disposables. They have, and Councillor MacDonald read out some names, but some of the other names are Green Gummy Bear, Rainbow and Cola Ice. They're simply being targeted at our younger residents. The vapes contain 2% or 20 milligrams of nicotine, which is the maximum strength allowed under regulations just now. This is the equivalent of smoking roughly 25 cigarettes a day. As an ex-smoker myself, and I started quite young, probably the age that some of these kids are starting on these vapes, it took me a long time to give up, and it was a horrible, horrible process to give up, and it's nicotine that I was having to give up. I am absolutely filled with dread at the thought of a whole generation of wee kids that are going to be addicted to this again and are going to have to go through all that withdrawal. I thought we were moving away from this. I would argue that supporting the ban of disposable vapes rather than helping people give up smoking, the industry is creating additional consumers of nicotine. By banning the sale of disposable vapes, we will encourage a more sustainable way of utilising e-cigarettes. I would ask you to support this motion and join with nationwide calls that have been coming in for a ban on this product. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll now move to Councillor Edlin, if you'd like to speak to your amendment.
Thank you, Provost. I will try to be very brief. The amendment is self-evident to those who read it, to all of you who read it, I presume. There is no doubt that we all accept that smoking is dangerous to your health. Smoking causes various dangerous cancers, and that vaping is known to be less dangerous and reduces the deaths in the populations from malignancies caused by smoking, which means if these vapes did not exist, people would be dying more because of smoking. That's a fact. They are preventing deaths. Now, the problem, nobody disputes the safety of the product in comparison to cigarettes. What we're discussing here is not the safety issue, we are discussing the disposal issue. The disposal is what's causing concern. We don't ban chocolate because the wrappings cause damage to the environment. We don't disposal problems need to be tackled in the way the motion suggests. You don't ban the product. Banning is a draconian measure reserved for products that seriously damage health, not because they can't be disposed of. I would also mention that the rechargeable version of this product is not the same as the disposable version. It's less convenient, it's not easy to use, and it may well be less safe as well. These are the reasons why I feel that way. My esteemed colleague, Councillor Morrison, will be speaking about this as a consumer of these products. Let me just say, I'm just going to conclude at that point, I don't want to talk too long about this, that in my previous career, I used to see patients with head and neck cancers. And when you see somebody with that, you don't forget it. It is the most, I wouldn't wish it on my own worst enemy. And to ban this product will be effectively meaning that more people will get this disease and they will suffer terrible deaths. So I would urge you to support the amendment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edlin. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you very much, Provost. And I arrive at the debate tonight actually having previously interacted with Laura Young on this issue as far back as January 2023. So I approach this with an open mind and a large degree of consideration. I actually have a lot of sympathy with the essence of the motion that Councillor MacDonald has put forward, and it has really been a bit of a balancing act between the very legitimate environmental concerns which Councillor MacDonald's motion raises, but one cannot escape the irrefutable body of opinion from clinicians, from the National Health Service and from the British Medical Association. So the NHS website currently states that nicotine vaping is substantially less harmful than smoking. The NHS website further states that those who vape are twice as likely to make a successful quit attempt than those who use other nicotine replacement therapies. The reason why I believe that the disposable products, and there are issues, there's a myriad of issues, not just around the recycling aspect, but also around enforcement, underage sales, and this is an emerging issue, and I welcome the opportunity to have that debate tonight because there are a lot of considerations, and this will be an issue of concern to parents across East Renfrewshire. But it is nevertheless an irrefutable fact that on the NHS website they state the variety of different vaping products, and of the products they suggest, the link's actually on the amendment so that members can verify this for themselves. 2 of the 3 products they say, which are vape bars of the sort the motion alludes to, pod devices and vape pens, 2 of those 3 are disposable in nature. And I believe that they do have a role to play in the general offering of people who are looking to make a quit attempt because they are cheaper. That removes barriers to entry, particularly for those from a more deprived background, where instead of paying £35–40 for a reusable device, these can be purchased at a much lower price point. Now, I appreciate that does give rise to some of the issues which Councillor MacDonald alluded to, for example, the unintended purchase by young people. However, there are other measures which could be taken. Shop in store of a complete prohibition of a product which has clinical worth and clinical value. So looking at whether Europe, for example, the Netherlands, for example, brings in a ban in July on the various different flavours which were referred to. So the only flavours which will be permitted for sale are those which are designed to mimic tobacco smoking. So there are other things which could be done, short of a full ban, to make this less attractive to young people. And in my view, my personal view, an outright ban should be the last measure. I'm not saying it's something that should be rolled out, but it's the last measure which you take, particularly when this has value to people who are making the single biggest measure they can make to improve their personal health and that of their loved ones. I further welcome the expression of intent by the UK government to consider legislation changes to ensure the vaping sector foots the bill for the collection and the treatment of used products, because that is a very important consideration. And also I welcome the forthcoming publication of the Scottish Government Commission report by Zero Waste Scotland to look at measures that we can deal with this waste and we can recycle as much of it as we possibly can. And finally, the last point I would raise is the reusable products are not necessarily the safer option. They require the use of a toxic liquid to refill the chamber. And if you have young children or pets at home, you have a bottle of liquid which, when it's vaporised in the chamber of an e-cigarette product, it's relatively safe for consumption, but in its liquid form, it's highly toxic. So you can understand why some people would see the sealed product as being the safer route to go.
20 seconds, Councillor.
That basically summarises everything. It's not an easy issue, it's a very complex issue, and I very much welcome the forthcoming discussion. And for me, the balance of opinion falls on supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll open it now to colleagues across the chamber, and 5 minutes for each anybody else would like to contribute. Oh, sorry. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. In my opinion, we need to regulate the use of vapes much more effectively and keep them out of hands of school children. The marketing budgets of tobacco firms are being used to entice new users into vaping. For those who use them, there is the habit as well as the social statement. Peer pressure is a key driver, and kids think it's not really smoking, is it? In addition, marketing includes all those wonderful flavours, including bubblegum flavours and such. So I agree that there is a place for vapes in the drive to help with smoking cessation, but it's down to education. Rather than a blanket ban, surely what we should be looking to do here is make it as difficult as possible for our youth to get hold of these products and punish those who supply them to underage people as harshly as we possibly can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor McLean. Councillor Bamforth.
Thank you, Provost. I've listened to what both sides have said, and I'm intrigued by what they say in the fourth paragraph about taking potential action against retailers, because my understanding is that these disposable vapes have no markings on them, so it would be impossible to know which retailers are selling these vapes, either to underage people or to speak to them about providing information and disposal receptacles, whatever it is. So how that would be feasible, given that our wardens and our police officers are under such resources are very much stretched just now, so I think it would be very, very difficult. And I understand what Councillor Evelyn mentioned about the health benefits, and nobody's disputing that there may be health benefits to vaping as opposed to smoking. But when you've got things like unicorn flavoured, these aren't appealing to people who already smoke and who want to direct them towards a healthier solution. I'm sorry, I don't know many people that would over age 11, 12 that would want to smoke something called a unicorn. And I recall one, I think it was Councillor Eglin mentioned about why we don't ban chocolate because of chocolate wrappers. I think he missed the point of how unsafe these vapes can be if they're discarded in public, or young children pick them up, or our council staff if they go over them with their grass cutting machines, or if they go in bin lorries, things like that. Chocolate wrappers don't have the same effect, I'm afraid, and chocolate is much nicer. I've never vaped and I've never smoked, so I can imagine that chocolate is much, much more pleasurable. So I get the principle that vaping is better, but this isn't about anti-vaping, it's against the disposable vapes. Thank you.
Councillor Wallace.
I totally understand where the motion is coming from, and I'm sure we all totally agree that something has to be done with this impact that we're having on the environment. But I just have to say that anyone who's lost a loved one as a result of smoking would just simply could not possibly agree with an outright ban, given the huge benefits that this is giving to people who do smoke. So just to say, on that basis, I can't support the motion. As I say, I do understand where it's coming from, but on that basis, I couldn't support it, but I would have to go with the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wallace. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks very much, Provost. I'd like to start by thanking Laura Young. She's reached out, I think, to all council members for a very effective campaign on surfacing the issues of the environmental impact of these disposable vapes, which we all see, we all witness, and the schools are currently dealing with actively to deal with it. So well done to Laura Young for raising that awareness and in getting it to this stage. I also thank Councillor MacDonald and Councillor Ireland for raising the original motion, which is very much focused on the environmental issues, narrowly focused on that, I would say. But again, it has stimulated the debate, so I thank them both for raising that. I thank Councillor Edlin and Morrison for expanding the debate into the health issues, the health implications, and the prevention issues. Prevention being prevention of access, prevention of supply. I think the key thing that is probably missing in the original motion is really that access of children to these devices in the first place, which is actually something more in our control in this council of what we can do in working with partners such as Trading Standards. They do these checks already, and Police Scotland are aware of the issues as well. So there is stuff locally that we can do rather than just raise a petition that we can do to help prevent supply locally. It's clear it's a very complex issue as the discussion has evolved. And it would have been very helpful if the original proposers for the motion had reached out to other parties to get that cross-party consensus here. Because actually, if I think of both motion and amendment, and I don't know if this is technically feasible, there is a combination in there somewhere of one amended amendment that I think we could all happily live with. But I don't think that's probably feasible technically under our standing orders. And it's a pity that that opportunity was not taken by the original proposers of the motion to do that, because I think we would have got a far better end result within this. The original motion deals with environmental issues, and those are important, and I thank them for raising it. The amendment deals with tackling the supply to underage users, which is much more in our control, and it is actually the issue that we're facing in terms of children accessing these products and littering on the streets. So I don't know if that is possible, that there could be a combined motion and amendment to deal with this. It is a complex issue. And we still haven't heard the results of the work of Zero Waste Scotland or the work that other people are doing. So it feels a little bit premature. I think we could have got to a better place with a combined motion and amendment. I'd like if we could do that, but and I don't know if, Provost, you can confirm if that is possible or not, so that we can get a consensus position. But if that is not the case, I think on balance, in terms of prevention and what is in our control, that we would support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Donnell. I will seek advice from Colin, but from this position, it seems that there are two opposing positions here, one for a ban and one for not having a ban. So I think I don't think it's possible to combine, but if you just give me a second. Yeah. So Colin confirms with me my unease about at this late stage of an amendment to the motion. So it's too late for that. Now that could have been done earlier at the calling for the amendment stage. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Provost. I think then it's in that case then that the question should now be put to members.
Thank you. Is there a seconder to that motion for the question now be put?
Provost, do I get a chance to sum up?
If you just leave it with me, please. Is there a seconder? Someone who has not spoken in the debate can second the motion that the question now be put.
I'll second.
And there is.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. And given that we have a member at the meeting via telephone, I suspect I'll have to do this via a roll call.
Point of order, Mr. Sweeney.
What is the rule that's been infringed?
You're not recognising elected members that still want to speak on it. Okay, so I'd like to put an amendment to that. Can I put an amendment?
Amendment to that.
Oh, sorry. We will now go to the vote to either agree that the question now be put, which is, we've discussed it, and there's no amendment, there's no further discussion on that, and I will now hand to Colin to conduct the vote, and it will be a roll call vote on the proposal that the question now be put.
Thank you, Provost. I'll read out each member's name. If you could reply yes and no or abstain in terms of the motion that the question now be put. Councillor Anderson?
Yes.
Councillor Bamford?
Sorry, is the question not yes or no to the motion?
No.
So this is to Councillor Anderson's.
To the question that the question now
the
be put.
question now be put. So the options, can we just go over the options, are agree that the question now be put.
Yep.
Don't agree.
Don't agree. Or abstain.
Or abstain. So you either agree that the question now be put, which means we go to Councillor MacDonald to sum up and then we vote on it. Or you don't agree or you abstain. So agree, don't agree, abstain. So Councillor Anderson said agree. Councillor Bamford, you are next. Do you agree?
Sorry, I missed that bit. After we agree or don't agree with this, does Councillor MacDonald still get to sum up?
I've already said that,
right,
Councillor
sorry,
Bamford.
I missed that
So
bit.
do you agree
Yes.
or not agree that the question now be put?
Yes.
Agree.
Councillor Buchanan? Councillor Campbell?
Agree.
Councillor Convery?
Disagree.
Councillor Cunningham?
Agree.
Councillor Edlin?
Agree.
Councillor Ireland?
Disagree. This is just trying to stop democracy.
Councillor Lundy?
Disagree.
Councillor MacDonald?
Disagree.
Councillor McLean? Agree. Councillor Merrick?
Disagree.
Provost Montague?
Agree.
Councillor Morrison?
Agree.
Councillor O'Donnell?
Agree.
Councillor Pragnell?
Agree.
Councillor Wallace?
Agree.
Thank you.
Are we no agreeing on this motion?
We can read it out, since it's
Thank you, members. 11 agree, 6 do not agree. That motion is carried.
Okay, so we're now at the stage where we've had a debate, full debate, and Councillor MacDonald, it's down to you now to sum up, and you're allowed 5 minutes, and then we will go to the vote on the motion and amendment. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Provost. I'm scunnered by this, to be honest with you. I'm absolutely embarrassed and ashamed of what I'm witnessing here in this chamber. I think it's absolutely... I mean, I thought this was the most apolitical motion that I could bring to this chamber, that I would have got cross-party support. To the Conservative members in this chamber, Conservative colleagues of yours across 5 councils have backed this. They have. They backed it. And yet we are going to send a message from East Renfrewshire. We are going to send a message from East Renfrewshire that we are not a council that collaborate on a very simple apolitical motion like this. It's absolutely embarrassing. So, to respond to Councillor Edlin, we're not calling for a ban on vapes. We recognise their use as a means to quitting smoking. Nobody is suggesting otherwise. This is purely about the waste aspect of these disposable vapes that are being littered across our community, and I would argue in years to come we are going to see an epidemic of this across our country, of just these things lying in the street. And it's going to be left to our councils, this council, to clear these up in an appropriate manner. So how do they do that? Do they collect them with sweeping machines? The council will not allow them to go into sweeping machines. Will they advocate for them to go into the back of bin lorries? Because the council will not do that either. So we are creating a mess for ourselves here by not supporting this. We are. We need a collaborative approach across this country from all 32 councils to support this. And for the fact that that seems to be what's happening in this chamber is not happening is utterly embarrassing. The chocolate wrapper analogy that Councillor Edlin spoke about, and I'll touch on what Councillor Bamford had said. When you destroy a chocolate wrapper, it doesn't explode. It doesn't create dangerous or sharp objects in the middle of the street that children will pick up and cut themselves. And I recognise Councillor Morrison's point about the fact that these are a means to help smokers and everything else. But the reality is that these disposable vapes, the issue is not with underage children buying these and littering, of which I recognise there is probably an aspect to that. But the majority of these vaping products that are being dropped in the street are being purchased legally by people that are older than the legal required age to buy them. They're just simply being dropped. So it's not an issue about the underage aspect, of which I recognise that as a separate issue. But the issue of the disposal and the littering of these is not coming from underage children. There are test purchases happening across various councils to make sure that retailers are staying within their legal requirements. The current regulations are not working, and that is that there has to be deposit banks in each one of the shops that sell them. Hardly any of the shops that I went to had them in place. So it's clearly not working. So what are we going to do? Are we going to allow these things to continue and for us to be able to have to police that somehow through the council? Council resources being stripped by clearing these things up off the street? Is it going to be left to litter picking groups to do the council's work? Because ultimately the council will not touch these. They won't touch them at all. So, concluding, you know, I'm so upset by it because, you know, going forward, we had an opportunity here to collaborate on something. You know, to really collaborate on supporting something that is going to help us as a council manage the local area. I mean, I can't think, you know, the status quo is not working. Therefore, you push to banning the items. And I would argue that, you know, this idea that somehow it's a lower price point and everything else, I can accept that. It's cost effective, and therein lies the problem. Because they're lower priced, they're being purchased with reckless abandon and dropped in the streets. You won't drop a reusable vape. You bought it for a higher price point, you use the product within it, and per smoke you probably spend the same amount of money.
20 seconds, Councillor.
So I would urge you, please, for the life of this motion, we have got to send a clear message to the Scottish Government that we are collaborative in our processes. We should collaborate together on this, and it should be a free vote. So mind yourselves to the fact that your group might support, or group leaders might support a different amendment, but you vote the way that you want to vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. I'll now hand to Colin to do the roll call vote. Thank you. Are we ready?
Thank you, Provost.
Can you say the options?
Yeah.
Motion, amendment, and abstain.
Members, I will call out each of your names and ask you to indicate whether you are voting for the motion, for the amendment, or abstaining. Please respond: motion, amendment, or abstain. Councillor Anderson?
Amendment.
Councillor Bamforth?
Motion.
Councillor Buchanan?
Motion.
Councillor Campbell?
Amendment.
Councillor Convery?
Motion.
Councillor Cunningham?
Amendment. Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Edlin?
Amendment.
Councillor Ireland?
Motion.
Councillor Lundy?
Motion.
Councillor MacDonald?
Motion.
Councillor McLean?
Amendment.
Councillor Merrick?
Motion.
Provost Montague?
Amendment.
Councillor Morrison?
Amendment.
Councillor O'Donnell?
Amendment.
Councillor Pragnell?
I am abstaining on the grounds that I wish there could have been collaboration, and I would have supported a combination of this motion, but I am abstaining on that ground.
Councillor Wallace?
Amendment.
Thank you. Just bear with me, please. Thank you. The votes are as follows: 7 in favour of the motion, 9 in favour of the amendment, and 1 abstention. The amendment is carried.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the business of the meeting. Thank you for your attendance.